All right, guys. Hi, hello. Again, welcome to Tuesday. What we've got going on today is we're going to talk a little bit about Buddhism, the other major religion established in India. This one is something that you might have a bit more experience with, I suppose. It's a bit more wide scale, I guess, mainstream. So we're going to talk about the beginnings of Buddhism and we're going to talk about the major principles. There's going to be a little bit more note taking than normal. So there's going to be a point where you're probably going to have to stop me and, again, do some writing, and that's okay. Just make sure that you're giving yourself enough time to get the details down. Again, we're going to talk briefly about impact of religion, and then there's work to be completed. So we're just going to dive right in. So Buddhism is, again, a religion or philosophy, one way or the other, it matters not, that is going to develop in northern India out of a group, that's very wealthy in what is located in what's modern day Nepal. And it's going to present itself kind of as a rival to Hinduism, and there will be a little bit of back and forth that happens, people thinking one is better than the other. The person who created Buddhism, unlike Hinduism, where there isn't a singular person who created the belief, it was something that developed as a group. The person who created Buddhism, his name is Siddhartha Gautama. Siddhartha Gautama was a prince, and he again grew up in a very privileged way. And one day he went out and he was amongst the people in his kingdom and realized that there was so much suffering. And he decided that it was going to be his whole life's goal to give up all of the privilege that he had to figure out, how do you fix that? How do you cure human suffering? When he gives up his belongings and his situation in life, he is going to go in search of enlightenment. And when he reaches that enlightenment and starts to share his beliefs and his approach, he will adopt the name Buddha. Buddha is a title and a title alone. There's been more than one Buddha throughout history, though Siddhartha Gautama was the first. When it comes right down to it, a lot of what Buddhism is based off of what Siddhartha Gautama, or Buddha, what he kind of came to understand after thinking about the world and thinking about life in general. Most of his revelations were through, again, very specific meditation process. The things that he was teaching become the basis of Buddhism overall. Like Hinduism, Buddhism is a little bit hard to grasp in some aspects because it is complex and it does, again, need a certain amount of close study to fully understand it. So I'm just going to give you the basics. And if you're interested in learning more about it, I did include another video, totally optional, just something for you to watch, see if it's going to be helpful for you to get a little bit more information from a different source besides just me. So the big thing that Buddha came up with in his revelations was that the world around us was not the reality that we should focus on. The material world, these are all illusions, things that we have convinced ourselves are necessary, but in actuality, they're not. The things that make our lives difficult, pain, poverty, sorrow, that's all because of our attachment to the things around us in the world. And in order to release yourself from that suffering, to gain the wisdom, to understand what is really going on, is to reach enlightenment or find nirvana. Bodhi is, again, going to be the word that they're looking for here. That is wisdom overall. And the important thing to keep in mind about Buddhism, like I said, it's more of a philosophy, a way of life, than it is just a religion. And Buddha is not a god. In Buddhism, there aren't any official gods. Again, when people would ask him time and time again, they're like, well, again, are you a god? And he'd reply, no. Are you an angel? No. A saint? No. what he would say is, I am awake. I am aware of what is around us and what is real and what is important. And he hopes that other people will figure that out as well. Just like with Hinduism, there are certain specific principles that are necessary to understand Buddhism. Of course, there's nirvana, which we just talked about. It's that ultimate reality. It is the kind of rising above what is around us and letting go of all of those attachments. It's the end of self and the reunion with the great world soul, which is something you do not need to know in full details about. The other major principles here, one is going to be the Four Noble Truths. And this was kind of I guess it comes right down to it, the four things that you have to understand in order to reach nirvana. So these are wise elements that help you to get to nirvana overall. Again, the other part of this, one aspect of the Four Noble Truths, is the middle or the eightfold path. And these are specific steps that you can take in order to help reach nirvana. The again, the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path are, again, that's 12 different bullets, and I can't fit them onto the slide. So they're on the next slide, and you're going to need to take them into your notes. So if you have to, leave a little space or make sure that you are writing these elements into your notes appropriately. Overall, we'll talk about them in a little bit. A aspect of Buddhism that's important to understand is that they're coming into the game after Hinduism has been well established. So there are certain things that people in India are going to believe, regardless if they're Hindu or if they're Buddhist. They're going to accept the idea of reincarnation in Buddhism, except they don't recognize the rigid caste system that Hinduism has helped to keep alive. They think that the idea that someone is born into one caste, one social order, is not something that it's doesn't lock you in. You can move around. The other piece of this is that Siddhartha Buddha was very adamant about the fact that all human beings can reach nirvana as long as you follow the Eightfold Path and you learn to accept the Four Noble Truths. The thing about Buddhism, which made it very popular very quickly, is that this message really appealed very much so to the downtrodden of India, the people at the bottom of that pyramid of the hierarchy. They, again, really could latch on to this because it was more hopeful than that of Hinduism in a lot of instances. Again, it's something that let people feel like there was something they could actually do to maybe make their lives better right here in the moment, as opposed to waiting until they're reincarnated in the next life. And like I said, this is more philosophy than it is religion. There's, again, a set of beliefs, but it's more or less, again, a way of thinking and structuring the way that you think, as opposed to a traditional religion where there is services and, again, practices that you would see in something like Islam and even Hinduism. So this might be the point where you are going to pause me so that you can write down all of these Four Noble Truths. I'm not going to talk super slow through this. So again, pause me whenever you need to so you can get this stuff down. So the Four Noble Truths, the four things that you have to come to understand in order to reach nirvana. One is that ordinary life is full of suffering. Again, this suffering is caused by our desire to satisfy ourselves, the need or desire for things. The way to end suffering is to end your desire for your selfish goals and to see others as extensions of ourselves. And then the last and the fourth noble truth is the way to end desire is to follow the middle path. And you're going to see here that these 8 steps are the Eightfold Path or the middle path. And they're going to basically straight up say, if you do these 8 things, you're going to reach nirvana. You're going to be able to move on from this place. So there's the right view. You need to know the Four Noble Truths, the right intention. You need to decide what you really want. What are the real wants in your life? Right speech. Got to speak the truth and speak well of others. So it's idea a little bit of karma dharma, the idea of doing what you should. Again, that right action. There's some 5 major do nots in Buddhism. Do not kill, do not steal, do not lie, do not be unchaste, do not take drugs or drink alcohol. Clean living, clean, honest living. That's what Buddhism is all about. Right livelihood, you must do work that uplifts our being. So you have to, again, do things that are for other people or for the good of all, as opposed to just doing something that's good for yourself. The right effort. When we're talking about this, this is something's a little bit more, I guess, harder to pin down. But Buddha said that those who follow the way might well follow the example of an ox that, again, urges through the deep mud carrying a heavy load. He's tired, but he's steady. Forward looking gaze, will not relax until he comes out of the mud. So, the idea of effort here is that you're going to go through tough, difficult times, but you have to keep going forward until you get past them and not give up. Right mindfulness, we must keep our minds in control of our senses. All we are is the result of what we have thought. This is this idea of trying to focus on, again, what is real and what is not. And then finally, we must meditate to see the world in a new way. And again, this is something that I would definitely encourage you to pause. I also included another video, totally optional, that goes through a pretty straightforward meditation. Again, it's something I would encourage you to try if you've never tried meditation before. If we were in class, you'd have to, because I would make you. But it's just something to put out there. Pause me, finish writing, pause me, do the meditation, wherever you're at. So the last thing to talk about before we're done today is the impact of religion. So for hundreds of years, Buddhism was the majority religion. It overtook Hinduism with Osaka. Osaka, remembering, was again one of the greatest leaders in Indian history from last week. The thing about Buddhism, though, is that it becomes interpreted in different ways over time. There's going to be a split that happens with Theravada Buddhism and then Mahayana, and then there's a third that develops down the road. And in India, it kind of loses favor, and Hinduism is going to rise back up, but it does find a foothold elsewhere in China, Korea, Japan. Your activity that you're doing for learning Objective 3 has a map that shows you that a little bit. What we see is that after Buddhism starts to break down and move out, Hinduism rises back up. But they do face a challenger. Islam is going to start to come into India in the early 8th century, so thinking the 700s. It was very popular in northwest India. Again, there's a modern impact that's very profound. After the Guptas, our last major empire in this time period, we're going to see that the country itself was very divided, disjointed. We said hundreds of years, again, of 70 different states or kingdoms or smaller groups who are constantly fighting with each other all across the country. And what that does is it opens up the country to foreign invaders. So this is the moment when Muslim tribes, Arabs, are going to start coming into India and bringing with them the Islamic faith. We're going to see here, this is also going to be the opening where Europeans start to show up in India. First the Portuguese, because they're always first, and then the British eventually come along. There is, again, a fight that goes down, again, between the Hindu warriors, or Rajputs, which was a really famous Hindu warrior class, again, overall, but they failed. The Arab rulers were, by that point, very powerful and had a tradition of being very successful. So they kind of defeated a lot of these different pieces and groups, and eventually a group is going to rise up to take control of India called the Mughals. The Mughals are not the Mongols, which we've talked about before, different group. We're going to be talking about them on Thursday. I'm going to give you a break in between here, so you'll have some more notes then. But that is it for now. You can put your notebooks away. Again, what I've got left to say is just about work to be completed. So again, really this week is kind of wide open for you to pick and choose when you're going to work on stuff, but you do have things to complete before the week is done. First is the Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam worksheet. Again, you can be able to add some more stuff to it today based off of this, and then you're turning it into turnitin.com. The other thing is I'm going to be checking your study aid. I know I said that I wasn't going to do a formal one, but the other group classes are, so I'm going to be checking on Thursday. Again, I'm just looking at your electronic copies to see that you've covered and started this process. I'm looking for at least 15 total completed by Thursday. We'll have covered 18 by the conclusion of Thursday. So again, we're more than halfway done with this. When we get back from break, we've got about a week, and then your study aid is coming due. It will be due to Classroom because it is electronic. As far as that stuff goes. And of course, the 24th then will be your first electronic online test, which we'll talk more about after break. I hope you guys all have a good day.